All right, welcome and thank you so much from the Criminal Justice Committee. Um, we have invited Thomas Gant, who is a community organizer for all of upstate, I believe, um, for the Center for Community Alternatives. And he's going to talk to us about the criminal justice battles we're facing right now. Um, and I'm especially grateful because I know it's in the middle of a really busy legislative session right now. So, Thomas, I will let you introduce yourself a little more and thank you so much for getting on today.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you to everybody for having me. Truly is an honor to be able to share and present today. So I would like to present on three different things. Just one part is the campaign that we are part of, things that we're doing. Give you a little update with the New York prison strike, humanitarian crisis that's going on right now, and also share with you some of our paths to what we believe is and will be legislative victories. So first, thank you. I'm Thomas Gant, and I am a community organizer for the Center for Community Alternatives. I am based upstate, but I'm connected with communities all across New York State, and mainly because of one of our passions and our models is to build power with anybody. Any person in our community has been impacted by systems of criminalization and incarceration. And so you don't have to be incarcerated to be a part of what we're building. You don't have to have a family member and loved one that's incarcerated. And I do want to say that everybody is impacted. And we're impacted because New York State spends $3 billion a year of your tax dollars on a system that, quite frankly, is not only harming folks, but now we know and we have literal proof that are killing our New York State citizens. So it is a tragedy at some of the things that's going on inside of prisons, and more importantly, the unjust burden that families have to deal with, right? Because when a person gets incarcerated, it isn't just the person that's incarcerated, it's their family and loved ones as well. So one of the things that we do at the Center for Community Alternatives, amongst many things that we do, I actually work in the advocacy and organizing arm of our organization. And so, what I simply do is help connect folks to platforms and opportunities to get heard, to help draft policies and legislations that will better our community, help us be more thriving, and more importantly, work to bring folks home from incarceration. So, I'm also formerly incarcerated. I did 25 years of incarceration. And I came home a little over 2.5 years ago. And one of the things that I love about the Center for Community Alternatives is that we believe that the folks most closest to the problems, as that old adage says, is the ones closest to the solutions. They're oftentimes the ones furthest away from resources. So we connect folks to resources, and that can mean holding rallies, holding public events, giving and sharing information, putting folks in contact with the legislators, and more importantly, helping them to fight in whatever way that they need support in doing that. So those are some of the things that we do at the Center for Community Alternatives. One of the campaigns that we are championing right now is our Communities Not Cages campaign. So recently we came off of a campaign that we won and fought hard for, which is the Clean Slate campaign. And that is just going to give folks that is formerly incarcerated an opportunity to participate in their communities meaningfully. Most folks, when they go to incarceration, was already disconnected or disenfranchised from being able to participate in some of the basic things like housing, employment, and even education. And so now with Clean Slate, folks are able to now come home after serving their time, after paying their debt to society, and can now make a more easier, smoother transition into society and participate productively. Most folks that are incarcerated want that upon their return. And so unfortunately, because of some of the laws that was in place, it continued to keep them disenfranchised. So we actually championed that campaign and won it. So now our New York citizens can now participate meaningfully at its onset and implementation in 2023, upwards of 2 million folks instantaneously is now going to be able to participate meaningfully. So Those are one of the campaigns that we champion. And now we are focusing on communities, not cages. Our campaign, Communities Not Cages, means that we think that there should be more investment in our communities and less in institutions or cages, prisons, and places that harm folks. The key to a better, thriving community is to invest more in that and invest more into its people, and then more importantly, provide opportunities. So those are things that we champion. One of the ways that we're going to help our citizens and people in our community is by getting sentencing laws changed. After the 1970s, Rockefeller drug laws that went into effect,
Yes.
this country had went on and declared war on folks that were plagued by drug problems in their community. They try to legislate themselves out of a problem. And whether or not their intention was good, or bad, ultimately, we know that our community suffered disproportionate rates. Mass incarceration bloomed and grew drastically in the 80s and then carried off into the 90s. And then on top of the drug problem that occurred, violence and all the other negative behaviors and environments that those things provide ensued. And so 94 crime bill went into play. And even now today, its authors has come out and said it was the wrong thing to do to try to legislate themselves out of a problem that was happening in their communities. So that 94 crime bill incentivized states to build prisons and then keep people occupied. And one way to keep people occupying prisons is to give them excessive sentences. So New York, in return, came out with 2 and 3 strike laws. So former Governor Pataki had this hard stance on crime and wanted to just simply lock folks up for a long time.
Yes.
Again, whether or not that was good or bad, we do know that our communities in New York State was affected disproportionately. 75% of folks that are incarcerated are Black and brown folks in marginalized communities. So it's a problem and it's a remedy. Now, New York State has taken some steps forward. Its people have, but however, the sentencing laws and structures haven't. And so one of the things that we want to do is provide a remedy because just because our New York State citizens have stepped forward, we are still sentencing folks under that same draconian, archaic, and I dare say racist sentencing structures that was in place in the 80s and 90s. And so the remedy to solving all of that is to have sentencing guidelines reformed and restructured. So our first bill that we came up with is the Marvin Mayfield Act. The Marvin Mayfield Act will give judges discretion to sentence people more appropriately. So right now, a judge's hands is tied. In a criminal procedure, you have the judge, you have the prosecutor, and then you have the defense. And so out of those 3 parties, the most neutral person is the judge, but yet their hands are tied. So they have to sentence people to certain sentencing structures. And so what we want to do is give the judge the power to sentence people to other things. We have judges on record who says that incarceration isn't always the answer. Sometimes people need treatment. Sometimes people are suffering from other external things that they need help with. And so they would rather sentence them to that. So the Marvin Mayfield Act will be a tool that judges can use that we're working on getting passed. Our second bill is the Second Look Act. The Second Look Act is a bill that will allow a person who has been incarcerated for at least 10 years to apply to or petition a judge to get resentenced or relooked at. This is the hope that folks who have been sentenced under those excessive sentences will be able to get some remedy or get a second chance to be looked at. A judge will be able to look at them for who they are today, and then they can also raise other mitigating circumstances that they couldn't raise back when they were sentenced to 20, 30, 40, and sometimes 50 years. And so we know now that people who maybe have been suffering or a survivor of domestic violence made bad decisions, so they can bring that up to a judge. We know that people have been suffering from mental health issues, addiction, things that society now says that incarceration isn't always the answer. They can bring those things to a judge's attention. And then lastly, we know that most people who commit crimes under the age of 25 or make bad decisions mainly do it because their brains haven't fully developed. Science now says that a person's brain isn't even fully developed until they're age 25. So couple that with who they are today, a person would be able to have a judge give them a second look. We don't have a mechanism like that in New York State. And so we're hoping to get on board and to bring us more up to speed and more to a contemporary place where a person can get resentenced or relooked at. This doesn't mean that the judge has to do it, but it gives them an opportunity. We have the support of the Chief Judge, Rowan Wilson. He's come out in support. His Chief Administrative Judge supports it. And also other court officials said that New York State needs a mechanism like that so that some of these long excessive sentences can get readdressed and relooked at. And so that is the second look at. And then the third bill is the Earned Time Act. The Earned Time Act is very important because it will incentivize folks that are incarcerated to participate in programs meaningfully, to have good behavior, and then to earn themselves out of prison a lot faster. This incentivizing mechanism will be in place to give folks hope. I'll tell you, I'm formerly incarcerated, and I know that sometimes you need an extra catalyst or an extra push or incentive to do the right thing. I was very blessed and fortunate to have the hope of my family, of my kids, and the support from my community. And most folks that are incarcerated don't have that. So if you incentivize folks to participate in programs, I'll say that this is where I call the aha moments happen at. This is where folks gain and learn skills and they can put them to use. I know when I was taking programs when I was incarcerated, college, I was a hospice aide. I learned sign language, and I did all these great things. And all these different ideas started swirling in my head. I wanted to not only change my life and my environment, but also give back to others. So if we can incentivize folks that are incarcerated to participate in programs, they'll do it. This will solve the problem that we have in prisons with it being so-called unsafe or dangerous. Because if a person is incentivized to participate in programs, they will. You'll have less instances for misconduct because folks will be focused on coming home as opposed to being stuck in a hellhole like prison. So it makes it safer for staff and folks that are visiting. And then as a latent consequence, folks can come home with those experiences and those skills and then put them to use. So these three bills that we are championing and working hard to get passed right now is very important because it gives hope to those that are incarcerated. We're talking about transforming the prison culture as we know it, and then ultimately giving hope to families. Because as I said earlier, mass incarceration and the folks going to prison isn't just about them, it's also about their families and their communities. And right now, the communities want help, they want restoration, they want their folks home. And so this is a great opportunity for us to be able to solve the problems and the remedies that's going on in prisons. Now, I want to transition to the New York State prison strikes, but if there's any questions on that, I don't know if this is the time that I can take questions on the three bills, or do you want me to wait to the end, or
Just name the three bills again.
the Earned Time Act, the Marvin Mayfield Act, and also the Second Look Act.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Ann, you can ask for questions.
Yeah, and I see Marvin, which is great. I can't necessarily see other people's hands, so just
We don't see the full stream. We see Marvin.
oh, there we go.
Okay, now, there you
Thank
go.
you, Ed. Thanks so much. Let me just start with this question, which is these seem really important and really timely. Um, of who's holding it back, especially in the Hudson Valley, and who do we need to push in the Hudson Valley?
Thank you. So we need support from a lot of folks, specifically in Hudson Valley. We don't have the support that we need. Ultimately, we are carrying approximately 60 assembly members and 30 senators. And as you know, in order to have the majority, we need at least 75 assembly members and we need 32 senators, state senators. And so we need support. So we always tell everybody that the best way to do it, and I'll put this link into the chat as well. The second link is to for you to contact your lawmaker,
Yeah.
whoever they may be, because this is how we get movement. The power lies with the people. I know that sounds cliched, but I'm in Albany every week. I was just there yesterday, and when I take constituents with me, there's something that, and I don't have to teach you and have to share this with you guys because you know it, but constituency power, I like to call it, matters. And so when they know that their constituents want this and there's a reflection, this tends to move them. Oftentimes, when I'm talking with lawmakers, they say, well, this isn't what my constituents want, or nobody in my community who I represent is saying that this is what they want. So we encourage everybody to tell the lawmaker by phone call or email that this is what we want. I take trips to Albany every single week. I'm also willing to get folks to Albany, and I'll sit you in a room with your lawmaker, set up a meeting, and let them know that you want these type of support for these bills. So there is a stagnant thing happening in you guys' area as well as upstate where I'm located. So these folks tend to be the last ones to get on board. So I've been having constituents and folks in the communities call their lawmakers. A simple phone call can go a long way because I may have been talking to them about certain things, and then they get a call from you, and next thing you know, they say, this is something I got to look into. So that type of pressure can happen. I also hold rallies and events in people's community to give info sessions so they can get more information. And then I'll actually come out to where you at, and if your lawmaker want an in-district meeting, I'll show up there and sit with them as well. So we also have an advocacy day, and I'll put that link in the chat as well soon. We're going to Albany on May 13th. It is the weekend after Mother's Day. We purposely and intentionally planned our advocacy day for May 13th because ultimately, right, we've been getting so much um, uh, calls about stress and pain and depression, and mainly from mothers, mainly from wives, mainly from women. Oftentimes, when we talk about mass incarceration, we look at it from a male's point of view, a patriarchal standpoint, and so many women and people that identify as such is carrying a tremendous burden that is, quite frankly, terrible, and it's a shame. And so now that we know that the pain that the families is having, this isn't just about incarcerated folks. This is about everyday tax-paying community members that want a better life, that they want restoration, that they deserve. And so keeping their loved ones incarcerated for 20, 30, 40 years is unacceptable. And now is the time to actually make that happen. So we're going to put an intentional spotlight on the issues that mothers and women are faced with mass incarceration to try to put more pressure on lawmakers. This past February 4th, we went to Albany with 579 folks, under 600 people, and we got a huge bump in support. I'm hoping to get at least 1,000 people in Albany this coming May 13th so that we can put pressure on lawmakers to make things happen. And that pressure looks like we hold press conferences, we talk to media in the $1 Million Staircase. We eat lunch. That's one of my favorite things to do in Albany is take folks to lunch. And then we actually put you in a room with your lawmakers so they can hear your stories, so they can hear you. And also so that here's how the power get built. Most folks don't even know who their lawmaker is or even talk to them personally. So we get a chance to have you up close and personal with them to let you know that they're not a mythical being. They are a regular human person, and they need to hear your story because you elected them to put them there to distribute services and goods. And so right now, the services that New York State provides with docs and their sentencing laws is not good. In fact, it's harming folks. I'll talk a little bit about the New York strike that's going on and how people that we know now are getting murdered. So this is your opportunity to come get your voice heard with us as well.
So much.
Oh,
Is there
oh,
anybody else that has a question?
okay, Thomas. I just want to say that we know who our lawmakers is in Albany. We
Okay.
was up there March the 4th, and we had set up appointments to meet with our state senator and our state assembly person. But we did not speak to them. We spoke to one of their aides.
Hmm.
They was not there. They was in meetings all day long. But we do had an opportunity to set up meetings at their office. They have an office out in in Usher County, wherever their peoples is at. But I would love to hook up with you all and go up. I don't know if I'd be able to go on May the 11th, you said?
May 13th.
May 13th.
Yes.
But we do go to Albany, but I think we need to go more than just once a year.
Okay.
Where, a lot of people go up. The NAACP usually go up every year in March.
Mm-hmm.
But we are encouraged to speak to our lawmakers all the time, to go visit their office.
Yes, ma'am.
And another question I wanted to say, yeah, um, oh, where you said something about a judge named Ron Wilson?
Yes,
Where's he located at?
So Rowan Wilson, Rowan. He's the Chief Judge of New York State. So
Oh, the
he's
chief, yeah, Chief Judge of New York State.
yes, ma'am. He heads up the Court of Appeals. So our highest court that we have in New York State is now headed by Chief Judge Rowan Wilson.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm actually in a very Democratic section of Ulster County. Sarah Hannah Shretha and Michelle Hinchy are my reps. Do you find that it's more likely that it's Republicans who are not moving on this, or do you feel that the Democrats need to be pushed as well?
Great question. So, of course, just traditionally, most Republicans are just going to stand in opposition just because. And I'm not here to be a political person. It's just what the actual fact is. For some reason, Republicans that I talk to and I have reached out to just stand in opposition. And I do want to say that I've actually had some off the record conversations with a lot of them. And a lot of them get it and they want things changed too, right? So, however, it's a controversial thing for whatever reason. Anything dealing with criminal justice, they traditionally tend to stay away from. Now, our Democrats, we have the supermajority. That means that our governor is Democratic, our Senate House is Democrats, and also our legislative is Democrat. So we can get bills passed. We don't need Republicans sign on to these bills. Bipartisanship is important because I think that it will reflect what everybody wants. But technically, we do not need no Republicans. We have enough numbers for Democrats to do it. So you may ask, well, why isn't these bills getting signed? So most Democrats who are kind of hesitant, even Hinchy, as you mentioned, is hesitant because they feel like some of their constituents, they classify themselves as being in the purple district. In other words, they don't want to give their opposition when it's time to get elected any type of footing or ground to stand on. And so some of them is more concerned, and I'm not saying this about your state senator or assembly member, but there are a lot of folks in politics that's more concerned with holding their seat and chair as opposed to what's doing the right thing morally. They've told me this. And so it fuels me, it burns me up because, again, I talk to family members and loved ones every single day, and they want change. They need change. So some of our Democrats do not have the political courage or will to do what's right. Most of them are just more concerned about keeping the seat. So, again, this is why having constituents reach out and tell them that this is what they want, they will have no choice but to stand up on that floor when it's time for a vote to say, this is what my constituents want. So I have to vote this way. These are the people that vote for me. And so this
Yes.
is what I try to explain to our constituents and people in our communities that you gotta let your voice heard because your elected official is trying to sidestep or stay away from certain things. But if they hear it from you, then they know that they got the backing to do what's right. And so some of them, again, we got 60 assembly members. Our target number is 75. So we're still missing some. We got 36 state senators have signed on. Our number is 32. And so we still need a couple more signed on. So we need all the help that we can get. So I tell everybody, let your lawmaker know that this is what you want, and they don't have no choice but to actually stand up and do what they're supposed to do.
So you saying that we got enough Democrats there to vote yes on these bills, but they're not coming forward to do it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
And technically, right, Ms. Bruce, you can technically pass a bill with only three state senators sign on. I mean, it's just a matter of them bringing it through committee, bringing it to the floor for a vote. But what happens is with bills like this, you need to show like the Speaker of the House, Carl
Yes.
Heston, you need to show the
Yes.
Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and you also need to
Right.
see the Majority Leader in Assembly, Crystal Peoples Stokes. You need to show them that you got the numbers. So if we come to them and say, look, we got 75 assembly members who says they in support of this, you got to bring this to a floor for a vote. If we show them that we got 32 senators, you got to bring this to the floor for a vote. So that's why we want to have the numbers. And so also what we do is educate lawmakers as well, because although like this is my life, so I'm in the community every day, and I know this is what community members want. The reality is most assembly members and Senate persons are not in the community every single day. They do not hear these things. So to them, it's not an urgency. And so I'm actually educating them, explaining to them how these bills is helpful, what it actually does, and things of this nature. And so the majority of them, once they hear and understand it, they do sign on. But then there's still some who still saying, and kind of hesitant.
Okay,
And
Gammon?
yeah, aren't you concerned though, with this look over or look again law that some judges, to put all the power in the judge's hands, they may not all be amenable to the look over thing, and especially with the president today uh, trying to crowd the field with these federal judges, would that be a good thing to have the judges in, to have that power?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. So, what we're doing with our bill is just giving them the ability to go lower or to do an alternative to incarceration. So, right now, they still have the power to either not even hear the case. They can still give a person the maximum sentence that they see fit. But right now, what we want to do with the eliminate mandatory minimums is that so right now, when they sentence a person, they say, well, I can't go below this. I have to give you this or higher. So what we're saying is we want to be able to say, no, you can go as low as you want. So that's the type of discretion that we're going to give them or ask them for, because technically they already have the discretion to sentence a person to 50, 20, 112 years, which one of our members have been sentenced to. And so his mother, talks about that all the time. He didn't kill anyone, and it doesn't mean that no crime is above the other or more egregious than the other. Any crimes in our community that's taken place is all bad. But however, this kid at the age of 17 robbed two folks in 2001. And so the judge, in order to make an example out of him, gave him the max on every single charge. So for those two robberies that he committed, he got 112 years. And that's technically a death sentence. So
Yes.
we want to be able to allow a person to, number one, have a second look so that another judge can say, that's not right. We need to do something different about that. We may want to prove a point in 2001, but after he's done, 25 years, this is enough. So we want to give a person like that an opportunity, and so many others. There's a young lady that we're fighting for right now. She went to prison under domestic violence. She's a survivor of domestic violence, right? And so while most of us may not be able to understand that or have not been exposed to that, it is real trauma that people carry in our communities, right? And so unfortunately, most folks do not talk about it. They don't get law enforcement involved, and they don't have no mechanism to have a remedy to help them in the situation that they're in. We have science, we have doctors, we have psychiatrists says that people who have been exposed to that make certain bad decisions. And so right now she's sitting in prison with 36 years because of a person who literally tortured her and her kid. And so her only way of escaping that was to commit the act that she did. And whether we agree with it or not, people have come out and said that this doesn't warrant a 36-year sentence for the thing that she done. But right now, there's no mechanism to help her. So if a bill like the Second Look Act was to be in place, we would be able to give her some help. Most recently, Chief Judge Ron Wilson had her escorted from the facility and brought her to his state judiciary. Her name is Tammy Eldridge, and this is why I can say it publicly because he had her speak. And he himself said that something needs to be done. I'm not giving you the full particulars of her case and what she has survived, but there's an outcry right now to give her the help and support that she needs. And so our bill will do that. So, and it's countless others who are sitting in prison with long sentences and no opportunity for help or hope. So that's why we want to do things like this. So that's the type of discretion and opportunity that we're working to give judges. We're not looking to take nothing away from them. We just want to give them another tool in their belt, which was to be able to sentence someone to something much lower.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions? Now, you spoke about sentencing laws can be changed. How would we go about doing that?
Thank you. So, how we doing it right now is the co-sponsorship. So, these three bills that we have, the Second Look Act, the Earned Time Act, and the Marvin Mayfield Act, this is how it's already been drafted up. So we have lawyers came up with the right legalese and the verbiage for it. So these bills that we're looking to try to change the policy on is just that. Our goal on how we get it passed is getting support from our state legislators and elected officials. So I have been doing other things in the local governments, which is getting resolutions passed, just having our city council say that they are in support, because sometimes the more grassroots local governments can be a signal to our state representatives that we need these things passed. So that's one way that we can get it done. Also, going directly to our legislators, making sure that they are actually hearing and we putting pressure on them to move forward with these bills. And then lastly, advocating, organizing, um, going to spaces where lawmakers at and are actually getting our voices heard. When we go to Albany and we have our advocacy days, we have a huge media push. So we get folks on cameras, we get folks on the news at night when folks are sitting down eating dinner. And this is our way of making sure that lawmakers hear us. If you don't show up to our advocacy days, we're going to make sure we find you where we at. We do social media pushes, we do phone call drives, we do email blasts, we do everything to try to keep our desires in their face, so to speak. So those are ways that we have gotten bills passed by doing those mechanisms. But me personally, I'm always open to trying to figure out, more ways. So I went directly to the governor. So we hold rallies. I believe in peaceful protests and demonstrations.
Yeah.
So we hold rallies outside that's very ruly, and making sure that everybody gets heard. I bring mothers, I bring families. I transport them. I put them in my own car sometime and get them to spaces so that their stories can get heard. Because oftentimes most folks' stories are going unheard, and their elected official, the ones who can change the laws, don't know that their story exists. So those are some of the ways that we work in advocacy and organizing and getting bills passed.
Okay, thank you. Now, um, Ann always kept us informed about the elder parole. How is that?
Yes. So the folks at the Release Aging Persons campaign, we are in coalition partners with. So they support our communities, not cages, and we also support the elder parole reform. So same thing. It's stagnant. It is very dastardly. It is despicable. It's a disgrace to keep people in prison for not only these excessive and these long amounts of times, but to keep our elderly folks
Yes,
incarcerated. One of the things that I always point out first, because whether you care about the person or the fact that they're elder, is that the amount of money. So we usually spend at least 70,000 per person every year. Once a person gets into their 40s and 50s and higher, it exponentially increases. So sometimes we're paying 150 to 170,000 dollars a year to warehouse our elderly. And it's a shame, really, right? When you keep a person in prison while they're elderly. Most folks have already uh, uh, paid their debt to society, have addressed their issues. There's science right now, Ms. Bruce, that says that after 10 years, a person enters in what they call criminal menopause. I never knew that that was a term, but that
permanent
simply means,
menopause. Oh,
yes, ma'am. So that just simply means that they're less likely to reoffend again, right? And so the elder parole bill will help folks that's 55 and older get a chance to go to parole board. We're not even saying release them. We're saying at least give them a chance to go to parole board. And so it's really a shame that our lawmakers have not done more to get that bill
elder. Yeah.
passed. But so I'm helping to support them as well, and those are definitely our partners and coalition partners.
Okay. Do anybody else have any questions?
I,
Okay,
we're
Gammon.
gonna hear, we're
One
gonna
more
hear.
thing, I just wanted to bring up the NAACP has a scholarship for the formerly incarcerated on their Aspire initiative. So they can check it out on the national website under scholarships.
Thank you, Gammon. Okay, Christine, you had said something.
No, I'm waiting I was eager to hear what he had to say about the the prison guard situation.
Okay, that would go be my next question. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. And also thank you for what the NAACP is doing, even with scholarships, especially for formerly incarcerated folks. Um, so if I didn't have this job and trying to help my community, I would be my butt in college somewhere too. So thank you, ma'am, for that you guys are doing. That's very important. Higher education is the great eradicator to poverty. And why I say that is that most folks who find themselves in prison or incarceration has been plagued by poverty. And poverty isn't just about having wealth, it's about not having opportunities and access to it. And so higher education kind of like eradicates that because it expands your horizon and give you more opportunities. So thank you guys for doing it. And which you already know that's why you do that work. But thank you for doing that. But just right now, just to give you a little idea about the climate that's going on in prisons right now. So as we know, New York State corrections officers all walked off the job illegally and performed an unsanctioned strike. Even their union was not even on board with them doing what they did. And so thousands of officers walked off the job, not only placing incarcerated individuals and civilian staff's lives in danger, but also their colleagues. So not all correction officers left their job, but those bad actors put the lives of many folks in danger.
Dangerous.
And
Right.
so, unfortunately, because of that, upwards of we're hearing 9 people have died. We have 7 people confirmed died. But that illegal, unsanctioned strike has sent ripples and waves across New York State. The governor had to call in the National Guard, which is a militarized institution traditionally, to come in and perform the jobs and duties of those officers. And so that's costing the state more money, right, to be able to do that. And because of the state of emergency that she had to declare, certain basic rights and policies that's normally in place in prisons all got thrown out the window because whenever there's a state of emergency, they don't operate things the way traditionally law has settled and called them to do. So those acts by those very despicable folks was wrong. They used what I'm calling subterfuge. They tried to claim that it was because of unsafe environments in prison and the institution and implementation of the HALT Act. So HALT is the humane alternative to long-term confinement. It's well settled law. All 3 branches of government signed it into law at the behest or at the push and pressure of the community. The community found out that people who were in solitary confinement was being treated very inhumanely. And so they put this in place to try to make those situations better. Docs from its onset was always against it, felt like they wanted to continue to punish people in these cruel and in inhumane, unusual ways. And so it was always pushed back from its onset. They never implemented it right. And so because of that, they claimed that this made prisons unsafe. And I'll say this, HALT was not the reason why prisons were unsafe. Prisons were unsafe because Department of Corrections traditionally does not think rehabilitative processes first. They think punishment. They look into always harm folks and to use violence to try to get away from people being violent. And so that is the reason why we have unsafe environments. And I'll tell you, as a person who spent 25 years in prison, I've seen many abuse, I've seen many tortures. I only seen a few assaults on staff. And most of the assaults that I seen took place because they were provoked or initiated. There's never no justification for violence. I want to make myself perfectly clear with that. However, some folks who are incarcerated, whose sent there to learn to become a better citizen, when they're provoked, oftentimes they make certain bad decisions. So the bad, dangerous environments was committed and often birthed by Department of Corrections and staff themselves. And so in saying that, they just so happened to go on strike the week of the unsealing indictment of officers, 14 folks who actually murdered Robert Brooks, a
Yes.
43-year-old black man and father, who was serving a 12-year sentence and was on his 8th year. He was
Mm.
handcuffed, as we saw on the tape, and brutally beat, kicked, stumped, punched, um, all type of things on tape, on their body cameras. They didn't know that they were being recorded. And so while this Robert Brooke incident finally was caught on tape, instances like this have taken place throughout prisons for decades. But there was never no cameras or never no proof, and no one really believes that a person incarcerated could make those claims. And so by that happening, the district attorney did the right thing and not allow those officers to continue to operate with impunity. They also did not allow them to not be held unaccountable. And so because they were bringing this situation to justice, this is when officers decided to do the strike, the same week that those unsealing indictments happened. So the subterfuge was to get us to look at halt as the reason why this, as opposed to they was thinking that they could take eyes off of the indictments that were taking place on their colleagues. So make no mistake that the strike didn't happen because of halt. The strike happened because they were still trying to divert and direct our attention to something else. And so
Yes.
it didn't work. Thank God and thankfully, our elected officials did the right thing. And so while as the governor and the commissioner moved to fire those officers, this was their pushback to say, we'll show you that we don't have to abide by your laws and we'll do what we want to do. And so this is why we had that. And so the humanitarian crisis happened, and then the governor fired 2,000 folks. They gave them time and time again through negotiations to return back to their jobs that they get paid very well for. And
They
so
sure do.
a handful of them, 2,000 of them, refused. And so the governor and commissioner, which probably the only thing that I'll give them credit for right now is to sticking to their guns and ground on that, and fired those bad actors. And so that's where we're at right now. So unfortunately, because of the lockdown, people was not able to get medications. They were not able to see doctors. They were not able to get the psychiatric help that they need. Some folks committed suicide.
Mm.
Some folks, because of there wasn't people who could provide food, simply died. People who had diabetes, people who had certain illnesses, um, was not able to get the medical attention that they need, and they died. And then we had another murder, which was witnessed by National Guard and also other incarcerated folks, of a 22-year-old black man, Messiah Nantwi, who was coming out of his cell to take a shower and got into an argument with the corrections officer. And they called the CERT team, the Corrections Emergency Response Team, and they tried to take him out of the shower and they killed him. And so they didn't know that this guy had went weeks without his medication. So he was taking medication to help him mentally, to stay healthy. And so because he hadn't had that medication, he wasn't able to control himself or his behaviors. And the officers only know one way to handle certain people.
And
And so
it's
they killed
killing.
him. Yeah. And the reason why that's has been labeled a murder right now is because Department of Corrections, with their brief initial interview of this process, place those officers on administrative leave. So you're not going to place somebody on administrative leave and not pay them if you don't think that there's some culpability of guilt there. And so that's where we're at right now. They're also looking into other claims of assault that folks have been making for quite some time as well. So, unfortunately, because that happened, people are suffering. We do have a direct line to certain folks that are incarcerated, and so visits have been interrupted. So one of the main things that keep folks sane and doing the right things in prison is having connection to their family members on visits and also legal visits. And so all those things have been disrupted. Some facilities sporadically have been trying to upstart visits back again only on weekends, and some facilities haven't. Some facilities are also trying to make steps towards legal visits, and some facilities just simply haven't. And so they don't have, their claim is they don't have the correct staffing to be able to do these things. But the National Guard has been called in to kind of offset any lack of coverage. So we don't understand why um, regular programming and necessary rehabilitative tools is not being implemented in prison. So that's where we're at right now. We are constantly putting pressure on lawmakers and trying to organize them to put pressure on the governor and also commissioner to do better for our folks that are incarcerated right now, because this is going to cause a whole nother trauma. We don't even know what this type of situation is going to cause and do harm to. And so, and then lastly, before I open up for questions, this is why one of the reasons why we're pushing our bills is because we're saying the best way to solve this problem is to have the remedy, and these bills is that remedy. If you can start getting more folks out, because I always say this, we don't have an understaffing problem. What we have is an overpopulation problem. So we need to let more folks out and then start closing more prisons and be more efficient in the spending. Because I every time I'm in spaces talking, I want to emphasize that we spend $3 billion a year on Department of Corrections, $3 billion. So while the population is going down, the cost is dramatically going up. And I'll tell you this, I live in Brockport. It's a little outside of Rochester. We need money out here in our communities. So you can let more folks out and spend that money and more effectively in communities and alternative ways to incarceration to have a more thriving community. We don't need to keep throwing more and more money into a system that we know kills people and is doing harm. So this is the type of fight that we're pushing. This is what we're pushing our lawmakers to trying to get a hold of and a handle of. And I'll start right there, see if anybody have any questions about anything dealing with the strike.
Well, I think you cover it because what was their particular action for? To take out the cameras and putting the prison in the
Yes, ma'am. You got it. You got it. So there was all these other different things. So right now, the governor, after the Robert Brooks murder, said that she's setting aside $400 million to make sure that every single officer has to wear a body camera. Right? That was going to happen. They didn't want that.
I
They
know,
didn't want the
yes.
body cameras because for two reasons. Now they have to abide by the law and the rules, right? Which they never traditionally didn't want to do. And then also they got to do their jobs. So most officers would rather go sit down, not do things they're supposed to be doing and make life, as easy as possible for them and to continue to do their violent acts. I will have to say this to you, Ms. Bruce. I spent 25 years of incarceration, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that there are a lot of correction officers who do the right thing.
I can believe that.
I've met some great men and women. I do not want to leave this meeting with the impression that everybody in prison corrections is evil. It's not the truth. There are a lot of great men and women who put on that uniform every day and wear it and do the job honorably. There are a lot. The unfortunate problem is these bad actors or this handful of people who continues to do these bad things
Yes.
causes like a group think mentality. And so most folks, even though they know it's the wrong thing, they don't step up and say, "Hey, man, that's not the right thing to do." They just go along and keep their head down because they're trying to take care of their family by doing their job as well. But I do want to say that there are a lot of great men and women who put on that uniform every single day and go and do a great job. I do want to emphasize that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any more questions? Okay, Ann.
I do.
I think Ed has a question.
Oh, Ed.
Uh, I thank you so much for laying all this stuff out there. Um, it's actually so unusual that I'm available on a weekday, but looking ahead in my calendar, I'm available on May 13th. I wonder if there are others who might also be in this meeting. That strike was just so clearly the Robert Brooks murder was such a big part of it, and they want to go back to the way things were before. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want body cameras, and that culture is the antithesis of restorative justice, of giving people the opportunity to to re-enter society, and after the kind of commitments they make to make their way out of incarceration. And I think that the strike also, and it's just something in a broader context that we need to be aware of. I think that it was partly because of the political tenor of the time that they felt that they're on the offensive in this backlash against progressive developments. And they might have even, some of them might have thought that Trump would come in and sort of take over and dictate what happens in New York. But Trump's not someone to support any strike. Not all state workers are on the same side of the barricades, though. There could be workers who strike in opposition to the Taylor law that desperately need our support under other circumstances, but clearly not this one.
But we might go backwards if they try to privatize, prisons. And that's up in the air. There's a lot of people want to make money off of prisons. And they're all friends of Trump's.
And I just echo what you're saying, Gammy. I believe Blackwater, is that the name of it? Betsy DeVos's brother, Eric Prince, has, invested heavily in private prisons. And we know that recently immigrants were sent to that awful prison, gulag, whatever you want to call it, in El Salvador. So, the current administration certainly they're definitely not for prison reform. Let me just leave it at that.
Right.
Thomas, did you have a question?
No, ma'am. I just wanted to make sure I'm answering everybody else's
No,
questions.
somebody who is that other person? Is that
Thomas
That was a Thomas also, right?
Pemberton. Thomas Pemberton.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes.
Thomas Pemberton? Yeah.
No, I didn't have a question. I'm just listening.
Oh, the line came around. I thought you had a question. Okay. Cheryl, do you have any question?
I did. My question to Mr. Gann is, does your organization have family members that are willing to, when you're having these meetings and these rallies, can they create their own family board that they can be heard at some of these meetings as well? Saying the opposition and the problems they're having as far as their family members not getting their rights back that are still incarcerated.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So we make an intentional push to make sure that the voices get heard from the families. As I said before, one of the main reasons why I get up every day and do this work and sacrifice time with my family, and even just enjoying regular life after serving all this time, is that I love doing what I do. And what that is people's closest to the problem have the solutions. And so our job that we do at CCA is make sure that they have opportunities. So we hold Zoom calls every first and second Thursday where our new members get a chance to learn about what we do. And then that second Zoom call, they get a chance to share and meet other folks that's in this community. We also make sure that they are at our speaker and our speaking opportunities. So when we hold our rallies and events, you're going to hear from mothers. You're going to hear from kids. You're going to hear from formerly incarcerated folks. You're going to hear from people who have their loved ones incarcerated. And I'll say this to you too, that it's not just men that's incarcerated. So we have husbands who come and talk about the impact that their wives are faced with and going through right now. Make an intentional turn to make sure that families get heard. This is not just us talking. Look, they have me, a formerly incarcerated person, actually leading the campaigns. So I'm the one that's out in the front, and they do everything they can to make sure I got the resources and the opportunities to make it go. And we just keep multiplying that. I do the same thing. So I just got done talking to a mother earlier, and her son has still yet to get his medication, and he has like an abscess or something in his mouth. So what we did was make sure that we called some of everybody who we knew, even the sheriffs, right? And so now her son has gotten the help and support. She's actually going to be talking to CBS tomorrow about some of the things. And so we make sure that our family and loved ones get the spotlight because this is what needs to be heard. It's one thing to hear from incarcerated folks who talk about how bad and evil prison is and the harm that's being done. It's another thing when you get a mother, when you get a wife, when you get a kid. We had an 8-year-old kid get up, totally unexpected, at one of our events and rallies and talk about the pain. An 8-year-old kid described pain that they're faced with because their father isn't in their life and they can't get a chance to see them. There wasn't a dry eye in the room because of this, spontaneous reaction from this 8-year-old who's out here advocating and fighting for their parents. So we make sure that we highlight certain things. And one of the things that we do also, ma'am, I want to say is that we walk the fine line and make sure we're not being exploitative. So we don't want to take advantage of other folks' problems and hurt and pain that we got. I'm actually friends with Robert Ricks, which is the father of Robert Brooks right now. And so we're doing everything we can. I made sure when I held a rally in front of the Monroe County Sheriff Jail in December, I made sure I didn't mention anything about any of the bills that we have going on because this was about getting his family the justice that they deserve. It was Robert Ricks who said, you need to make sure that when you speak about these bills, this will make sure that we don't have another Robert Brooks. So we intentionally try to walk with and being informed about the traumas that our community members have, and even the members in our organization. We don't force anybody to talk on camera, and as you can tell, I do a lot of talking. I love talking, so I talk for everybody, right? I was a stutterer when I grew up. I didn't talk when I was a kid, right? I was very embarrassed by it, so I'm kind of making up for time. So I could talk for hours. So we don't force anybody to talk or to step up or to do anything. But if they do want to get hurt, we make sure that everybody hear them from every mountaintop to every valley. We make sure that people's stories get heard and seen. We do op-eds. We make sure that the New York Times interview family members and get a direct firsthand account of some of these atrocities that's taking place. And we make sure that nobody else is speaking for them. So I may tell folks to try to cut back on some of the language that they use because they're so angry in moments that I try to say, hey, we can't use that word now. You might want to find a different word. But that's as far as we go. We make sure that we give the family members the support that they deserve without being exploitative because this campaign has been going on for 3 years now. It just so happens that all these other folks are saying that happened to me too. I need some help and support. I thought I was the only one going through this. I thought I was the only one who had a nephew and it's like, no, there's thousands of us because there's 33,000 folks, 33,600 folks locked up in New York State right now. Those 33,000 folks is connected to at least one, two, maybe four family members. So just think about how many thousands of hundreds of thousands of family members and loved ones is touched by this problem that we have. And so ultimately, it's much more deeper than the harms that's happening in prison. It's things that's not happening in our communities, which is opportunities, which is investment, which is support. So we try to make sure that we are champion policies and supports that's changing that type of narrative. And more importantly, empowering folks. As I said at the beginning of my intro, folks who's impacted right now, they got power. They don't need power. They just need the support to be able to put them in position to these opportunities and platforms. And that's what we provide.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any more questions, Ann?
Just thank you very much. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Madeline has a question.
Madeline, you got to unmute.
I just have a quick comment. I see a lot of educators and retired educators on here. We know that this was a part of working in this community because we have a prison right down the road, two prisons actually. So, we know as educators that this the impact of incarceration, we saw that often in our district, right? And had to be aware of, sometimes if a kid comes in and is acting, not his or her usual self, perhaps, something's happened with their incarcerated father. I have had many students that had incarcerated mothers as well. So over the course of my career. So it's just thinking in terms, I don't know if we had ever had any sensitivity training in that regard, but that might be something to look at too. You know, how much is incarceration a part of our current students? And just, you know, reminding teachers that, you know, this is something that you need to have some sensitivity about.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we did have it a long time ago. We had sensitivity in that school.
Mhm.
And you know, the teachers wasn't mandatory to attend. They if they wanted to.
But it just, you know, we have a prison right in our community. So,
Yes.
you know,
Two.
two,
Woodburn.
two. Well, two right down Eastern and the what is
Woodburn.
the Ulster? What's the other one?
Also, and then Woodburn right
Tappahannock,
down the road.
Ulster.
Napanock and Eastern. Those are two
Yeah.
prisons right there. So yeah.
And another one right down the road from us, Woodburn.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, Ann, you got any?
I just wanted to again say thank you so much. I just can't imagine how busy you are right now. And so we really appreciate this update. And we should make sure that we follow up with you about May 13th and
Yes.
following up with our members to get letters, emails, calls into our elected officials.
Because
Yes.
Ed said he was interested in going.
Yes. And we also provide transportation. I want to,
Okay.
so if folks don't want to drive, we can also provide transportation.
So if we in Ellenville, someone in Ellenville, maybe 3 or 4, where would we get the transportation? In Kingston?
Yeah, so there's several things. Once we get close to the event and we see how many people have registered, this is why
Yes.
registering
Okay.
early is that much more important because we can get a bus, and if it's not enough people to fill a bus, then we'll provide train tickets.
Okay.
Yes,
Mm.
ma'am. And so we
That's
usually
that's
do
good
make a
to
stop in
know.
Kingston too.
Okay, if there's not any more questions.
I have one more question before you leave, Mr. Gant.
Mhm.
When you were incarcerated, how often did you witness the NAACP visiting the prisons or prisons that you were in?
I didn't see enough. I will say this: I was at Attica Correctional Facility, and I know we were trying to get the NAACP to come in, so we did have some contact when I was in Attica. When I went to Wendy, it was kind of like non-existent, unfortunately. But I will say having contact in the early 2000s with NAACP was very helpful. We did a lot of fundraisers. And but we lost our outside contact. So
Mm.
it was kind of hard to have contact. And then you also need staff.
Mm.
We need an actual staff person on the inside being the
Yes.
coordinator because we couldn't really directly
Right.
interact with folks. So as you can imagine, they was not being trying to be helpful in that facility to keeping us contact. But I just want to say that traditionally, this institution, this organization brings hope to a lot of folks. I mean, we feel seen, we feel protected, we feel worth from the efforts that the NAACP does. And you guys are what I'm gonna call, excuse my language, but you're shakers and movers. In other words, when NAACP get involved with something, things change.
That's
So
right.
I don't want to let that go. And also thank you and thank you to all the chapters and all folks who's doing great work because it's meaningful. And I'm telling you right now that folks need hope. And so to hear when the NAACP gets involved with stuff, it brings a lot of hope. So thank you and thanks for everybody because you guys don't get the pat on the back, for the support and work that you do. But just know that you impact humans in ways that you probably never even know. So thank you and thank you on behalf of all folks who have received help and support from this organization.
And thank you, Thomas,
Thank
for
you.
taking out of
Thank
time to
you.
come
Thank you.
to speak to us.
Thank you.
And
May,
we
Thank you
will,
very much.
Great.
and
Thank
may
you
I
so much.
get information from either Ann or Thomas for next month's newsletter?
oh,
Yes.
you want a message from Thomas. That's what you said.
Just information about, the upcoming
Mobilization.
meeting in Albany, and just information about the organization.
Oh, excellent. So I do
Whoever
have
can give it to me.
I do have Ann's email. Would it be okay if I send everything to Ann and then she can disperse it?
Absolutely, if it's all right with Ann.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, guys. Dude, this was an honor. I appreciate you. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Congratulations on your freedom.